So just when does a hobby become a profession? Well, for Mike Dresch, he decided that he couldn't find the electric guitar that he really wanted. So why not make his own? Kayla Roberts has his story.
Well, I first started playing guitar when I was 15. First started getting into rock music, bands like U2 and Triumph and all sorts of 80s stuff, and that was the era. Finally got one when I was 15, right out of the Sears catalog. Looked like an old Gibson Explorer, only had like 9 buttons on it and multiple effects and distortion and stuff. It was just the most horrible thing ever, but it looked really cool, so I thought, well, looking cool is pretty cool. Now that I know what I like in a guitar, it takes longer to find something off the shelf that's going to work for you rather than knowing, okay, I can build it this way, I know it's going to be perfect for me. Well, this is the shape that we're attempting to create off of this alder body. This is my routing template, but in order for me to route this body out, I have to glue up these pieces of wood so they become one piece of wood. So what we're going to be doing here is I've already joined the edges, which means we squared them off and make sure they're perfectly flat and straight. So basically when I glue them up, you're going to see no glue line between these 2 pieces of wood. And as you can see, hopefully you can see at the camera, that the grain is actually fairly close between these 2 pieces of wood. So when it's actually glued up, it's going to look like 1 piece of wood rather than 2 pieces glued up, as much as possible anyways. So anyways, let's get gluing.
After the glue is spread, clamps are put in place to secure the 2 pieces of wood together for the glue to dry. After the glue has dried, the clamps are removed so the body of the guitar can be cut out.
So there is our piece of wood, all joined up. Now what we're going to do is take my template here. I'm going to line up, if you see I've drawn a center line on my template. That's what I use to put my template on the piece of wood here and go by the center line where the 2 pieces of wood joined. Basically everything in making guitar is all based off a center line. So that way, when you put the neck on, it's going to line up with the bridge, the pickups are going to line up underneath the strings, and basically everything is keyed around that center line. Very important. It's just a passion. Just something I've always, loved the art of guitar making. There's really nothing quite like the feeling of plugging in a guitar and playing a guitar that you built. It's really hard to describe. I mean, it's just a great natural high.
After everything has been cut out, it will be run through the sander to remove any excess glue. The neck must be sanded down perfectly flat so when the fretboard is glued on, there aren't any voids between the surface of the neck and the fretboard.
Being a guitar player, one thing I find other guitar players and myself have experienced is something that, well, I don't know if it's necessarily I call it this, but it's a common thing called guitar acquisition syndrome, or GAS is the acronym. It's for the desire to have more and better guitars. And I fell victim to it too. We first had the internet, sit there looking at guitars, wow, that's really cool. Well, if I could have a guitar like that, that would be great. I've got some friends that are good woodworkers that showed me a couple things. For the most part, I'm self-taught, but there's been guys that, for instance, I actually did buy a custom guitar from a guy that's doing something like what I'm aspiring to do, which is build guitars for a living, named Joe Driscoll out in Fort Worth, Texas. And I forged a real good friendship with him over the 2.5 years my guitar was being built with him. I've learned a lot from guys like Joe. I just call him up and ask him questions like, hey Joe, how do I do this kind of finish? What goes into the prep for it? And he's been really gracious. And the best, I don't know if it's the best piece or worst piece of advice he ever gave me was, Mike, if you start building guitars, you're not going to want to stop. So, and it is true. It's absolutely true.
A router is used to cut out pockets for the electronics to be installed into the guitar. After everything has been cut out, it's time to put the fretboard together. Mike puts the frets and inlays in by hand and uses super glue to hold them in place.
Currently I own a recording studio, which is my main breadwinning job, I guess you'd say. That's my main priority. my main income, but I definitely would like to grow Dresch Guitars into more of that, and then maybe even turn my recording studio space into guitar manufacturing space. One other direction I'm really planning on taking with the business is basically building guitars that I'd like to play and offering those for sale just as spec guitars. I think that's probably more the way I'm going to go. I'll still do custom guitars for people, but I think building spec guitars is definitely the way to go. You can build more efficiently, and you know, it's just things that are churning around in my head that I always thought that'd be really cool.
Once all steps have been completed, it's time to paint the guitar. To get a proper finish, numerous coats must be applied. After each coat, the guitar must be allowed to dry and cure before the next one can be put on. The final step in painting is to buff out the gloss. After the guitar has been dried, Mike will assemble everything and it will be ready for its new owner.
I've made guitars for Nick Thomas from the Spill Canvas. They're on Sire Records. I've made a guitar for John Parker from Nodes of Ranvier. He played it on tour for a while, and then Chad Pettit from The Blinding Light plays my guitar, and it's his #1 guitar. Well, you know, with my main gig being my recording studio, it's only going to be a matter of time before my hearing starts to go, so got to have a backup plan. Not that I would call this a backup plan. You know, this is, you know, I don't know if you want to call it my favorite hobby or, you know, my fledgling business, but it's definitely something for when I'm old and have no ears anymore. So definitely a route I want to pursue for the future.